Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Rem and Sam podcast. It's Tuesday night. We're doing a little post-game reaction this Tuesday night. Not to the NBA games, though. NBA games still currently going on. We've got the Knicks taking it to the Indiana Pacers in Madison Square Garden. Almost a big night for Indiana hoops. We've got the Pacers and the Knicks in a dramatic Game 5. We also had the debut of Caitlin Clark. Tonight is the start of the WNBA season. So I wanted to wait till after. I wanted to watch the Caitlin Clark game, to be honest. So we're recording this after Caitlin Clark finished playing. And like I said, unfortunately, the Pacers, well, unfortunately for Indiana fans, the Pacers are losing to the Knicks. And unfortunately for Indiana fans of the Fever, was not their night against the Connecticut Sun. The final score, let's see if that game hadn't quite gone final yet, but it was 92-71 for the Connecticut Sun and the Indiana Fever. And I'm debating right now on whether or not I kick my mom off the Sling TV stream and go watch Aces, whoever the Aces are playing. Is that Aces Mercury? Ooh, is that Brittany Griner versus Aja Wilson? Okay, that's a high level game. I know Kelsey Plum. Already thinking about kicking mom off the stream. Anyways, no, I don't think I'm gonna do that. Luckily, we're running the Pacers game on Pacers Knicks game on HBO. Shout out to Max right now for carrying the secondary streams, and that way we've been able to dual screen it for the families that have the one screen streaming service situation going on. But yeah, shout out to Max for the playoff games. We'll see what happens if that goes away, because this was supposed to be, the sports thing was like supposed to be an add-on, and I think it's just been like a free thing that they've just been throwing on. Maybe they're just tricking us by saying it's supposed to be an add-on, but obviously with the news of the big joint venture, ESPN, Fox, I think Warner Brother Time, they're all gonna do the joint venture on the sports app, if I'm getting that right. So we'll see what happens with Max in general with that. But like we were saying, Caitlin Clark just finished playing in her WNBA debut, and to be honest, like looking at the box score, she ended up getting to 20 points. I know 5 of 15 from the field, 6 of 6 from the free throw line, but it was a little, at first it was a little like the not the first Wnba regular season game, but the Wnba summer league game, where it wasn't just, to be fair to Caitlin Clark, it was not that bad. I think the Wemby summer league game he was like 0 for 10 to start. Did he go double digits 0 for to start his NBA career? Not officially on the books anyways, but for those that remember the initial Vegas experience with Wemby. But again, to get to the 20-point mark, I think the graphic they're going to be able to put up on the debut will be able to look good. I know 10 turnovers sneaking in there in the box score as well too. And I think, the 10 turnovers was because of a lot of the pressure. They're playing the Connecticut Sun, which was one of the better defensive teams, they were saying, in the WNBA last year. And the defensive pressure that they were putting on the Fever was definitely very intense for the game. But the double teams and the traps on Caitlin Clark right away. Like, again, this is Caitlin Clark's first WNBA game. So Aaliyah Boston is also there. She was #1 overall pick, rookie of the year last year. They've also got, I don't want to get the first name wrong. Is it Kelsey Mitchell? I know it's Kay Mitchell, but I think it's Kelsey Mitchell. Again, I'm just thinking of Kelsey Plum, still trying to watch the Aces. But I think Kelsey Mitchell, who led the team in scoring last year, I think she was off the bench for this game as well, too. But you've got her there on the court as well, too, at various times for the opposing team. And still, like the entire time, it was just trap Caitlin Clark, blitz Caitlin Clark, like get the ball out of the hand. So like just right away, first game, the respect that she was getting, like, I mean, she was the most respected player on the court in terms of like in that, from the defensive perspective, like offensively, like in that type of way. And Alyssa Thomas also on the other end, you got was second in MVP voting last year for the Connecticut Sun. I know the Connecticut Sun made a little bit of run in the WNBA playoffs as well, too, but she was almost a little, and I don't want to say, you don't want to say like Sabonis-y, because again, she was like second in MVP voting last year. So, I mean, she's not really like Jokic, because Jokic has more of a perimeter game. Like Thomas doesn't really have the perimeter game. So you're not guarding her the same way that you're guarding Caitlin Clark. Like she's still, I mean, offensively in this game, she was she was all around the best player in the game. But again, just the way you're guarding her, maybe that's probably the fault of the Fever for doing it that way. But just it did seem like on both sides of the court, Caitlin Clark was the most, focused on player that the defenses were really locking in on. Again, just double team, blitzed every time. And, it's not like she hadn't seen that at Iowa before. So some of the stuff where she was like early in the game where she was just kept like dribbling back out, and that was really like causing a lot of the turnovers. She was throwing a lot of bad passes. It's like, okay, like again, it's not like you haven't seen this kind of defensive. I mean, you haven't seen this kind of pressure, obviously, the first game in the WNBA, but I think the looks have been there before. And I think you saw in this game, which will be something that to keep track of over the season, but you saw her get comfortable throughout the course of the game. So I know, 5-15 from the field. She ended 4 of 11 for 3, but she took a couple of, rush shots at the end of the game after it was kind of already out of reach. Again, it was a 20-point game to finish, final score. But, for the majority of the game, she was like 4 for 9. So while some of the drives weren't really going there, the 3-pointer was still there the whole time, and she was able to get to her shot going left a couple of times. And I know, again, she missed a bunch of her early shots, but they were able to finally get her running off of screens, off the ball early in the game. And that's where she got her first 3 and was able to knock down the look. And shout out to Carrington as well, too, who played, and just, the entire Suns team played a fantastic defense tonight. But they were able to get her a look off the ball. And they tried to do that a little bit more like second quarter, third quarter-ish, to middle of the game, try to get her again like moving off a screen and try to get her separation that way. So we'll see if that's some adjustment that they'll make going forward, especially early in the games, because early in this game as well too, which this will be another fit thing to watch with them, because I mean, again, they have Aaliyah Boston there, and she's the former number 1 overall pick. So up until you realize that, hey, the Caitlin Clark thing, like we have an actual chance to get it, like Aaliyah Boston is the franchise cornerstone, and the offensive numbers that she put up last year, like sneaky, really amazing rookie season. And I was going back and looking at some of the advanced stats recently for the WNBA for the last couple of years. And for her last season, I just like some of the offensive win shares and some of the, again, just the offensive advanced stats for her. It's like, oh, she's kind of already in the mix for one of the better offensive players in the league. And there'll be some interesting fit stuff with her and Clark, because early in the game, it was definitely, let's get Boston involved. And they were saying that Clark herself was saying that her focus was going to be getting her teammates involved and not necessarily scoring herself. And, I mean, she's a good teammate for saying that kind of stuff, but it definitely seemed like the Boston post-ups were the focus of the offense early. And when they go to the Boston post-up, it definitely seems like it slows stuff down a little bit. And she was very effective. I don't know what the shooting number for her tonight was. She only ended up with 6 shots, 2 for 6. But you can see, again, like last season, a great field goal percentage. You can see the footwork, and you can see all the stuff is there when she gets it. She's got great potential at that spot. But the speed at which she was doing some of the moves and what that did to the offense, it'll be interesting to see how they're able to get the Caitlin Clark perimeter stuff to balance that out with that. Because another thing, like right away, you can see with her is just not just, the respect in the half court that she gets, but in transition, she might already be, and, I don't have like I shouldn't make this statement because I don't have the depth of WNBA knowledge of all the teams right now, but she might be one of the better transition players in the WNBA. And I think she had a couple of transition turnovers tonight, but a lot of it was because it seemed like, the speed at which she was moving in transition was almost too fast for the other players. And in a good way where, again, sometimes in the half court, you get sped up and that's what's causing the turnovers. But she was like, again, throwing and at Iowa, it seemed like they were used to this. This was basically the best part of their offense. But the throw ahead pass in transition where she is throwing that pass where it's almost like she's at the other team's 3-point line. And there was a moment early in the game where they subbed her out. And I forget who the backup point guard was that went in, or maybe it was the other starting guard. And, she moved over as primary ball handler. But they got a couple other transition looks where she brought the ball up the court a little bit farther than Caitlin Clark had when they throw that pass, and they were able to get the looks. And it's just like, okay, this is kind of where, this is what we're used to. And that there's some veteran connection stuff there as well, too, with the familiarity. But as the team around her is able to get used to the speed at which she's able to initiate in transition, I think you're really going to see her excel there. So again, the number was rough tonight for the debut. I get, a lot of the turnovers and a lot of the punditry about her in her transition for the NBA was, what was that transition going to look like? And historically, there is a rough transition in the WNBA. Whereas, when Wembanyama was entering into the NBA this season for his rookie season, we were kind of like, hey, can he be like an all-star this year? And even throughout the season, it's like, hey, he's in the mix to be an all-star. At the end of the season, me and Sam were talking about him in the all-NBA conversation. So while he's obviously has to adjust, it's like, okay, he's going to adjust and still be one of the better players in the league while he's doing that. And that's not a Wembanyama thing either. Obviously, that's if you're not even just a high-level draft pick. If you can have a great rookie season, get in that mix for the top of the league. Whereas in the WNBA, it's like, okay, is that transition a little harder? Is there a little bit rougher there? And I think especially for the guard position as well, too, because I was looking back at WNBA players to make the all WNBA team as a rookie. And I was looking at All-Star as well, too, because again, when you're saying like she's going to have a rough transition into the WNBA, it's like, okay, let's not like write off the fact that she might not, like, I don't necessarily think we should write off the fact of her like being an all-star or in that kind of all NBA mix. That the all WNBA team is tough because there's only two compared to the WNBA or the NBA where you have 15 guys. Again, it's a bigger league, so I get proportionally it might all make sense, but there is, fewer spots there. But I wouldn't necessarily write off her being like an all-star this season. Again, it's not, is that case a lot stronger if she shoots better from the field than probably, but the players that have made the all WNBA team as a rookie in recent history, so like since 2010, have all basically been centers. And it's Breanna Stewart, Elena Della Don, if I said that right, hopefully, and then Tina Charles, which, shout out for her run in the Mystic, and then she was drafted in Chicago. Not Tina Charles, Della Don. And cool shoe as well, too. Sleeper shoe. But, all three of those are like MVP candidates. Again, like they walked in the league, dominated right away. And you have a bunch between like 2000 and 2010. Sue Bird, Taurasi both made all WNBA teams, and then a bunch in the late 90s, but that was right when the WNBA started. So I don't even know if that counts. Technically, everybody in 97 was their first year in the WNBA when they made all WNBA that season. But in more modern history, since 2010, only 3 people have done it. Candace Parker in 2008 as well, too. So all the legendary people have done it. So again, I think we expect Caitlin Clark for a career for her name to be amongst those great players. But I guess Taurasi and Bird both made the all WNBA team as a guard. So there is, a bar there as, hey, if she is on the level of this type of generational talent, should she be in the mix like that? But again, you get the centers that have been, and that's common in the NBA too, where the center can enter the league and dominate a little bit easier than maybe a guard can in their rookie season. I don't think there's anything surprising there. But again, if the transition stuff smooths out, they'll figure out some of the lineup stuff. I think some of the stuff with her in Boston over the course of the season, we'll see how that's able to work out. And again, just her own comfortability, like we said it with Wnba, but he's going to grow throughout the season and he's going to make leaps and bounds where you almost have to break it up into little bitty segments. And I think you're going to have to do that with Caitlin Clark. And again, you could just see it in this game where she was more comfortable by the end of it. I mean, a lot of that too is as the Connecticut Sun are pulling out ahead, the lead's getting long, they're maybe loosening up a little bit, allowing her to maybe the traps are slowing down and stuff like that. Like I get that, but I think you can see in this game her getting more comfortable with that stuff. Again, the 3-pointer was there for her basically the whole time. And it wasn't really there for her. Like, again, the defensive pressure for the Connecticut Sun was really good. But for a majority of the game, she was in that 50-point range. And, it was heat checky, missed a bunch, made a few in a row, missed a bunch at the end. But that 3-pointer will be there for her for the season. I think the playmaking will be there as the teammates get used to her timing. And the defensive stuff was another thing that people were questioning for her entering the NBA, because it's like, okay, I get it's not like a strong point over, like she's not like known as a defender at Iowa, obviously, but I think in the W, like you watch her and she's like, okay, she has the potential to be actually an above average defender, and not like in a Steph way where I think, again, Steph is like a really, I think a really good defender, but there's still going to be mismatches against certain players where you're going to hunt the switch on him just because of the size differential. And that could happen with Caitlin Clark in the WNBA, but I think less likely than a guy like she is more of a bigger guard in that wing, like a little more. And I know we made the Luka comparison, and Sam was even saying more like Trae Young, and I was saying more like Luka for, like an NBA comparison for Caitlin Clark. And I get, in terms of like positionally size for that position, I think the Luka thing makes sense. And I thought stylistically as well too, I thought the Luka thing made sense where it was like it had to be a heliocentric thing around her at Iowa, because that was the other thing with her from Iowa to the WNBA. It's not just can she keep up this scoring, but is she going to be the focal point of the offense again this way? And, she said it before the game, like we said earlier, no, I'm more of a facilitator. Let's run the offense. Hey, let's get Boston some post-ups. Obviously, 6 shots for Boston, maybe not the focal point. There was some foul trouble as well, too, for her there, where she missed a big chunk of the game. But, can she do that heliocentric thing in the WNBA the same way? And, I get the Mavs have built their team to run that way around Luka. So at this point, they've built their team where it's like they have one version of the team, so they can't like do something else. They can go to Kyrie, but they can't morph identities necessarily. Where I think with Caitlin Clark, when she's out there, the team has the ability to like morph identities. And I think I have to like rethink the Luka comparison and the Trae Young comparison as well, too, because, the Trae Young defensive thing is, I think is much different than the Caitlin Clark defensive thing will ever be in the WNBA. But again, that heliocentric thing, I don't think she has to run an offense that way. And again, the Mavs are built to be that way around Luka. So we don't know if Luka is in a different situation, what he's willing to give and take with different star players and different systems. But we haven't like seen another version of it. And the teams have been successful as well, too. They might very well end up in the Western Conference Finals. And if they're playing Minnesota, like, or Denver, who knows? I think they'd be the underdog in either of those series. But again, I think we saw even in this game, the team where early in the game, it's Boston and then Caitlin Clark kind of hunting her 3-pointer throughout the course of the game. I think she's not like a Luka Doncic heliocentric type player. I think she's an incredible scorer. And if you need her to be the focal point of the offense, she'll be a great bucket getter. And that's what they needed her to be at Iowa. She was kind of the one person on that team that was able to create a bucket. And she did it at the highest level that we've ever seen anybody ever do in college basketball, men or women. She's the points leader all time. But the role players they had there were the wing players, the hustle players, the 3-point shooters. Again, all very successful, back-to-back championships. I think the Kate Martin pick for the Aces is going to be like a sneaky pick for him. I think she's really going to help their depth. I think we saw, Gabby Marshall and a bunch of the other players, and to have Schulte in the post as well there too, especially this season, was a really nice little change of pace for him. We saw the players around her excel, but they needed her to be that focal point. And that way, that was the only way the team was going to go as far as they were going to go. And in the WNBA, yeah, at some point they might need her to do that. And she is talented enough. And as she continues to grow as a player, maybe that's where the team will just naturally progress, where it's like, okay, obviously Caitlin Clark, we're going to run everything around her. We're going to do the heliocentric thing because she's that amazing as a player. And she should be dictating everything. Like, she can play make, she can shoot, she can do all that stuff. Like, if it progresses that way naturally, that would make a ton of sense. But again, another star player there in Boston. Who knows what other assets they'll bring in? I mean, the WNBA, it's very much like the NBA, where right now these teams are definitely, like, the star players are definitely teaming up. And I think it's much more, with the way the WNBA is set up right here, it's much more easy for the players to get away with it from a public standpoint. And I would almost say like we kind of want it at this point. Like, it means that we're going to at least have some good teams. Like Aces Liberty is, I mean, if that's a playoff series, a finals matchup, that's going to be gold. We have the Storm right now too with Agumake and Lloyd and who was the Diggin Smith. They got Diggin Smith as well too. They got their big three there in Seattle. And the Sun were the fourth team in title odds going into the season. So you got the Aces were 1, Liberty 2, Storm 3, Sun 4. And there was a little bit of a drop off between the top 2 and the Storm. And then again, from the Storm to the Sun. So there is some tier stuff working there, but the Sun were the fourth best team projected going into the season. So, a very competitive opponent. Again, Alyssa Thomas, second in MVP voting, a very top-notch opponent for the Fever to be playing. But the Fever were also 5th in title odds. And again, there is tiers there as well. It's not just the 5th best team in the league. And there is maybe, Vegas is juicing it a little bit. Caitlin Clark, there's some extra hype around it. But with the veterans, with Aaliyah Boston, and with Caitlin Clark, as we say, expected to continue to grow throughout the season, I think there is some legitimate expectations where I'd have to go look at the other teams that were, let's see if we can pull up the other teams that were below them. Pause quick, because I did those top 3 that we mentioned, because of the star power that they have, are going to be pretty hard to overcome. And then you see the way that the Sun were able to hustle tonight, and the Sun as well too. I don't know like who they've lost necessarily or whatever over the course of the season, but Carrington, I know, was primarily playing off of the bench last year. And then they had this Harris, Ty Harris, who was also off the bench last year as well, led the WNBA in 3-point percentage, but was only at like 2 a game or something like that. And she has moved into a starting role, and she was phenomenal tonight against the Fever. She was, again, shot super effectively from the field. I think, again, incredibly efficient last year, but as her role increases, how will that maintain? It looked incredible tonight. And I don't know what her role was on that team last year, if she was more like a spot up shooter off of screens type stuff, but she was, off the dribble, getting her own shot, pick and roll, really looked comfortable handling the ball tonight. So it really seemed like she had grown her game. And then Carrington had 16 points as well. I don't know if that was her final total, but she had 16 points and then ended up leaving the game with some kind of injury and then entered the game back in. So I don't know if she scored after she entered the game, but before she left with injury, she was at 16 points. The defense that she was playing on Clark was giving Clark all kinds of problems. So the Sun are definitely going to be a competitive team as well. You've got the Wings at 6, Mercury, Dream, Lynx, Sky, Mystics, and then the Sparks. We know the Sparks are in rebuild mode with the 2 top draft picks. Same with the Sky as well too. And the Sky are going to be down Cardosa for a minute, which is going to be tough. And the Sky are going to make me, they're going to make me sign up for the WNBA League Pass, which I don't know if, the thing is, I don't know if I sign up for it, if I'm gonna get the blackout coverage version or just not get the Chicago games, because in the Midwest, I don't know if I like need the regional sports network or whatever, because for the NBA League Pass, for where I'm at, we're blacked out for Chicago games, Pacer games, and we get Pistons games, and yeah, Bulls games, Pacers games, and I think there's one more as well too that I'm forgetting. Oh, Timberwolves games. No, we don't get Timberwolves games as well too in this area on League Pass. We get the Bucks games and we get the Pistons games. Those would be like the other two, like kind of regional close teams in that area. But if it follows the same kind of pattern, then unfortunately we wouldn't get the Chicago Sky games, and we also wouldn't get the Fever games as well too. Would be like the two teams that I want to see. And the Aces, which is like the other team that I would want to see, our favorite team, is going to be just on ESPN and ABC all the time. So there's no reason to get the league pass. They're just going to be on, ESPN TV, like NBA TV. If they're just going to be on these national, they're just going to be snuck in on these national broadcasts every now and then. So, and the thing is, the Fever are going to be there too. And I know the Sky might sneak in on a couple. Like the WNBA is going to be on like NBA TV and I think ESPN2 and some of this stuff a little bit more. I think Prime is doing the next, I want to say the very next Fever game. So this will be out on Wednesday. We're recording this Tuesday. This will be out Wednesday. So I think Thursday, the Fever play the Liberty, which tough run for the Fever to get, again, the very competitive Sun team and then title team, contending team in the Liberty, which the Liberty were kind of tested tonight by the Mystics, which, let's see, the Mystics were, second worst title odds going into the season here on, shout out to DRF Sportsbook. We'll definitely go slide over there and see what the odds are over there. But on this sportsbook that I'm looking at right now, and if we go check the odds on BetStamp to make sure that this sportsbook has the best odds. I'm not saying that this one does, but the one we're looking at, the Mystics had the second longest title odds as of Tuesday night. So I think the fact that the Liberty got tested, Breanna Stewart, they played some pretty good defense on her. The other thing was Jonquel Jones, who was hurt for a majority of the season last year. They had her in the playoffs and in the finals as well too. So it didn't really matter for like the stretch run, but she was playing off injury last year. She looked really incredible for a couple of the stretches where I peeked over tonight, checking that game out as well too, as the Liberty Mystics. So I will be curious to see what the numbers were or are going to be for tonight's game, especially the Fever Connecticut Sun game, because we had that Fever game. We had this Knicks Pacers game going on, which is still going on right now. We also had I think there was a Yankees game. I forget who the Yankees were playing, but there was a Yankees game. And then the Bruins were playing an NHL playoff game. So between the Yankees, the Knicks, you got two, New York teams, but basically the biggest baseball team in the Yankees. And then arguably, not arguably like top five market, but top five market. I was gonna say arguably the biggest, but top five market in NBA team in the Knicks. Top five. It has to be a top five hockey market in Boston. Is there a bigger hockey city than Boston? I guess the Canadian teams. I can't forget about the Canadian teams. Probably more locked into hockey. I don't know, maybe Minnesota. So I shouldn't just throw out a top five for Boston like that. But I mean, very historic, locked in franchise in Boston. And not that hockey would be competing in the ratings anyways, but I'd be curious to see where the WNBA stacked up against those NBA games, because that's a big game 5 as well too. The series is tied. The game is in MSG. I know the Knicks are dealing with some injuries, no Anunoby for tonight. And I think Precious Achua was out as well too. I think they had Miles McBride starting in that spot. So super impressive again that the Knicks are able to pull out this win against the Pacers. But kind of like we were saying against Friday, like you get Miles McBride as a shooter in the corner. Like, I get you're a little bit smaller on defense, but you still have the Villanova big three. So as long as you have the Villanova vibes out there, I think that's the karma that all the Knicks fans are kind of clinging to right now. But my guess is that the Fever game on ESPN2 would do the highest rating. I don't know if we've done too many pods with Allie at this point, but again, the Caitlin Clark effect has been real every time. Every time we've seen numbers for it and been like, okay, is this like what is it? The numbers have been absolutely historic. So, I mean, this has been, or had to have been, at least one of the most highly anticipated basketball debuts in a while. And, the NBA thing is weird because, like we're saying with Wnba, you see him in Summer League for a couple of games. And yeah, maybe rookies sit out for Summer League too, as well, too. So not the same for every rookie in the NBA, but you can see a rookie in Summer League. You get him in the preseason, and then you finally get him in the, so you can see him in, 10 plus games before you ever get him in the NBA. I mean, obviously outside of whatever college or international stuff you're watching, but, like 10 plus NBA-ish games. And there's like the Sacramento and Utah Summer League where you can sneak a couple of games in there as well, too, before the major Vegas ones. So yeah, I know she was popping off in the WNBA preseason. That was highly anticipated as well, too. There's the 13,000 people in Indiana just for the preseason game. And this Connecticut Sun game was sold out as well, too. They said it's the first time they sold out a home opener in like 20 years. So, again, the Caitlin Clark effect has always proven that it's real. So I would be curious to see if the TV numbers again bear out and say, oh yeah, no, people were definitely tuning in for this one, especially because early on the shots weren't going in. And it's not like the Iowa game where if the shots aren't going on early in an Iowa game, it's like, okay, she's still the best player in college basketball and the team's competitive. The game still could be close and she could get some shots off at the end. But, her first game in the WNBA, if the shots aren't going on, or I'm not saying the game, I don't know what the retention numbers for the game are going to be, but whatever the game peaked at, I think it probably would my guess is it had the highest peak of any game tonight. But maybe this Knicks Pacers game was able to squeak by. But again, the Knicks were kind of killing them. So maybe people were sneaking over to that. Maybe Pacers fans felt more at peace watching Caitlin Clark lose than watching Tyrese Halliburton and Pascal Siakam lose to the Knicks bench. But shout out to Caitlin Clark again. I think some successful things in the debut. Obviously not like a perfect debut, but the game will happen. It was like with Wnba, like 2 or 3 games in when they had that Phoenix game and he made a couple of great two-way plays, changed the course of that game, hit a couple of big threes. They ended up winning that game. So the game will happen soon where she'll have the big number. The shooting will be efficient. Probably like some double-double where she gets the assists, the turnovers are cut out. Maybe there's like a big 3 at the end of the game to win. Who knows what happens against the Liberty? Maybe against Sabrina. That's going to be an incredible matchup because, to be honest, like Caitlin Clark has kind of stepped on Sabrina's corner a little bit. Like Sabrina was the anticipated prospect, number 1 overall, can't miss. She had her injury thing, but was fully back in the WNBA last year. She was on the all WNBA team, second team. She was, really like had that big kind of fame boost with be careful saying that, like the fame boost with the NBA stuff, but it helps as well too. So she did have the fame boost with the 3-point contest with Steph Curry, kind of helped people remember like who she is as a basketball player. So I don't know if I don't know if she'll be guarding Caitlin Clark necessarily, but I don't know if the defense that she would provide would be like what the Sun were able to provide against her in this matchup as well. So I know, maybe going to the rim against like Jones and Breanna Stewart especially is going to be a different challenge in itself, but maybe some of the perimeter stuff, the 3-point stuff, maybe she has a chance to catch fire a little bit in this upcoming game. But, we'll be locked into the Prime Video broadcast. I don't know if there's because they do the all 22 for the football broadcast. So I don't know if there's like an all 22 version of the NBA thing, if there's like some kind of full court shot, or maybe there's like they do like that 2K angle or that overhead backboard shot where you're kind of looking at it straight on versus looking at it going looking at the game going side to side, and then they flip back and forth. I don't know if they got, I feel like they got to do some kind of alternate broadcast ordeal for the game just to mix it out, just because I'm curious what an alternate camera angle broadcast would look like for a basketball game, because I want to see what it looks like for an NBA game. Are we getting the NBA on Prime Video? I'm trying to think if their name is in the mix. I know Netflix's name is in the mix now for the NFL with that Christmas Day game. I don't know if I saw that as that was getting done. I think probably that's what it was versus they're just in the mix. So not like there's going to be an all broadcast for the Netflix Christmas games, but if I forget if Prime Video was in the mix for the NBA. So if it is, we'll see what kind of stuff they're able to throw together. But we'll see what the kind of stuff they're able to throw together for this WNBA matchup too, which I think will be a very, I think it'll have its moment. It's hard to say whether or not it'll be a close game, because again, I think there was, the odds say there was some anticipation for the Fever, but who knows if that's overhyped. We'll see if they're able to, I guess, clean some stuff up between now and Thursday. And the Liberty they'll be out, I think, to have a good performance after a close win like this against the Mystics when they probably weren't supposed to be that close. So they'll probably be more motivated to have a good performance. So, it'll be tough for them, but Boston against Stewart, maybe they'll need to get her more involved a little bit. Maybe she'll need to step up. We'll see. I'm dipping my toe into the WNBA this year. Well, new to the game, so forgive me if I don't get everything totally right, but we'll try to follow along, and this will just be I guess like anything, this will just be us kind of keeping track of what we think about the WNBA. So we'll you'll see how our thoughts, I guess, change over the course of the season as we try to watch as many of these games as possible. Because again, we'll be watching the Caitlin Clark experience. We'll be watching the Aces, Becky Hammond, and I mean, yeah, we're gonna be watching the Chicago Sky and Angel Reese. I mean, Angel Reese might make me become a Sky fan. I don't know. If I'm gonna make some bad basketball decisions this year watching the Sky. It's gonna be tough. But shout out to the WNBA. It's back. It's exciting. It's ready to see what the upcoming season has in store for the WNBA. And I think again, I don't know what the peak outcome is from a numbers standpoint, and from just like I don't know where it needs to be at the end of the season. But again, after tonight, if it's like, oh man, this was really like an encouraging start, I think the WNBA has a really good chance to get to wherever that kind of mark is. And I'm sure they know what that is. And I don't know if it's a financial number. Again, I don't know if it's just like a consistent ratings number. And I guess I don't know where they're at in their negotiations for their media rights deal as well, too, because I know Simmons said on his pod on Sunday that the NBA side of things was already done. And I haven't looked in to see if that would have included the WNBA. If I know the WNBA, like we said, had talked about doing their own thing. If that was definitely where they were going, I would assume that they would try to want to, capitalize on, and just try to see if it now is the time to go independent like that. But, I think the league is going to be in a really good place at the end of this year. And I think Caitlin Clark especially is going to, as a player, be in a really good place by the end of the year. And I would not write her off as a potential all-star. I think we'll see some continued growth over these next couple of games. I think we'll see the teammates get comfortable. And I guess, it'll be a big challenge. This will be a good test for the coach as well, too, to kind of see where they're at. Because again, I don't really know about the coach like that in that kind of way. I guess I'm trying to even think outside of Becky Hammond, can I name another WNBA coach off the top of my head? I was going to say Dawn Staley is not a WNBA coach, unfortunately. So let me think. Derek Fisher is not a WNBA coach anymore. Is there any like former NBA players? Oh, there was which of the former No, Lisa Leslie's she's a big three coach, or is she a WNBA coach? Let's look up the WNBA coaches. I mean, it's not like I'm not gonna know who these people are, I think, but I just don't know what the names are off the top of my head. So we got, Becky Hammon. Okay, Kurt Miller is the coach of the Sparks. He was the coach of the Suns. I saw that looking at some of the teams in the past. Okay, Teresa Weatherspoon was hired as the coach of the Sky. That's the former player I was thinking of. And I remember in the draft process, and then, they bring in Angel Reese and Cardoso, and it's like, ooh, then with Teresa Weatherspoon, that's a pretty fun combination. Tanisha Wright is the coach of the Atlanta Dream. She is a former player herself. Okay, Christy Sides is the coach of the Fever. I mean, how did I not know that? I literally just watched the whole game, and I know. I'm now that I read her name, I know they said it like a million times that they said, "Oh yeah, we talked to Christy Sides. We talked to Christy Sides." Nate Tibbetts is a coach of the Mercury. Cheryl Reeve, Noelle Quinn, Latricia Trammell, coach of the Wings. Eric Thibault, coach of the Mystic, and Sandy Braun-Dello is the coach of the Liberties. So I guess I only know 3.5 of the coaches. I'll give myself a half a point for knowing who the name of Kurt Miller. I guess I don't know any points for knowing the names off the top, but I if I get a point for knowing the name after looking at it, then I guess I give myself 3.5 points. Do I get like a quarter of a point for Christy Sides? No, I don't think I get, after just watching the game and now remembering, I don't think I get any points for Christy Sides, unfortunately. But yeah, shout out to the WNBA. Super excited to lock in on the season, and we'll see how it runs, because I know they've got the Olympic thing in there in the mix. So let's see if we can get a quick schedule look up here and see how we lay out the season, because I know, the NBA is going to take us all the way till June. And then again, with the Olympics, like, there is 2024, there's going to be no shortage of basketball, but a little WNBA sprinkled in at the end of an NBA season would be pretty nice. And again, I mean, the NBA is like 2 games a night at this point. So I am, and that just means you can really lock in on one game at a time. You can throw all your bets on one game, but shout out to BETSTAMP. But there is a little time to mix in the WNBA. I know, like, Saturday they're doing a doubleheader early for the WNBA. So you get like a noon and then like a 2:30 type game, and it's ABC, Saturday prime time-ish type stuff. So there is definitely time to sneak in some WNBA games. And then we got the Sky and the Wings on NBA TV. Okay, so that'll be the game to check out if we get the blackout for the Sky, because I guess if you get the blackout on League Pass, you also do get the blackout on NBA TV. I forgot about that. But yeah, you get, if like the Minnesota games, you just got to watch them on the regional sports network, because the NBA TV is just, for a lot of those games, is just mooching off of the regional sports broadcast. Like, they're just tapping in and just putting it on NBA TV. So, a guy like me, I can watch the Phoenix one or the Golden State one. And if it's the Golden State one, make no mistake, we're watching it on mute. But the New Orleans one, we'll shout out to the New Orleans guys. We like watching the New Orleans guys. But yeah, we can't watch the Chicago one. So if we can watch this Chicago Sky Dallas Wings game Saturday on NBA TV, we'll officially sign up for the WNBA League Pass and fully commit to the WNBA season. Or otherwise, like I said, we'll just, we'll still lock in on the national TV games. Make no mistake, WNBA, we will still support the best way we can. But if I can't watch Angel Reese on the League Pass, I'm not getting it. So it just it is what it is. I don't know what else to tell you, like Commissioner Engelbert. But that is, if you just want to like tap into my stream and just say, hey, let's just make an exception over here in the Midwest, I'll I would be very, very pleased. The league, I mean, I would be willing to compensate you. If I don't know if they'll be like, hey, yeah, 200 with labor, it's like $1,000 to tap into the system and the satellite and change the blackout thing. Who knows? Well, let's talk about it. We can negotiate a deal where I can watch these Chicago Sky games on my phone. I just want to see the skies. So we'll see where the Caitlin Clark thing goes. What were the rookie of the year odds behind her? This is the last thing we'll look at for for the WNBA. But this is a heavy WNBA pod. But hey, season is starting. We're trying to support. Let's go Caitlin Clark. Let's go Kelsey Plum. Let's go A'ja Wilson. A'ja Wilson just got a shoe. They just got private jets. They just got all the time on the pod. So, I mean, we're trying to hype up the WNBA right now. It's a big time for the season. Okay, so they don't have odds, unfortunately, for Rookie of the Year, but they have odds for MVP. A'ja Wilson is 1. Alyssa Thomas is 2. She was 2 last year and put up a triple-double again tonight. So they said for Alyssa Thomas, she has 8. She had like 8 triple-doubles last year, or for her career. And the rest of WNBA history, there was like 21 triple-doubles. So again, she's like, I bet, Wilt Chamberlain-esque with the stat sheet. Maybe Bill Walton-y with I guess Bill Walton didn't have the full assist numbers, but the passing was definitely there for Bill Walton. But A'ja Wilson 1, Alyssa Thomas 2. Caitlin Clark is number 3 right now for MVP voting, tied with Breanna Stewart after Breanna Stewart's 8-point performance tonight against the Washington Mystics. 11-1. Again, I think Caitlin Clark's going to have a great season, and I don't even want to say this because I don't want to end up on the bulletin board, but I feel like I need to give solid financial advice here on Rem and Sam. I would think twice about betting the Caitlin Clark 11-1 MVP odds this early on. I feel like maybe, again, she's tied with Breanna Stewart right now. Maybe after Thursday's game, if Breanna Stewart turns it around, which would not be surprising, and drops like a 25-10, maybe those odds, maybe you can get the Caitlin Clark odds a little bit lower over the next couple of games than 11-1. But make no mistake, the hype for Caitlin Clark is not dead. Okay, we can move to the NBA quickly. The draft lottery was this weekend, and I got to brag about the draft lottery quickly because shout out to Atlanta for winning the lottery. The first time ever the Hawks won the lottery, but make no mistake, the Spurs actually won the lottery. I mean, you're not all surprised, but again, Atlanta, the first time ever that they've ended up actually winning the draft lottery. And they said that Ellie Duncan had said that on the broadcast going into it. So the minute she said that, I was like, okay, I don't know if she got like a tip or an information. I don't know why she would say that specifically. I mean, that is a fact. Obviously, it's been quite a while now for the lottery. This is the 2024 lottery, so 85. I mean, oh geez, math off the top of my head, I'm so bad. But you got 40 lotteries, almost 40 years of the draft lottery, if it started in 85. So to not win in 40 years is pretty impressive. I mean, to not have great odds as well too is kind of an accomplishment in itself too over the course of the lottery. But when she said that, it's like, okay, let's definitely keep an eye on that. And then the Hawks going into it have like the 9th or 10th best odds. So they're early on in the reveal if the thing kind of goes early as planned, or if they don't jump up, like, right away in the broadcast. So they start going through the teams, and then it's like, okay, Atlanta has jumped into the top 4. And I know when they do the lottery now, they draw the top 4, and then the rest of the teams are seeded by, whatever the rest of the order is. It's not like they draw every single lottery team, just the top 4, and then the rest of the draft will proceed as normal. So it's like, okay, Atlanta has hopped into the top 4. And in my gut, it's like, they probably didn't like hop up to 4. That's not what happened with the ping pong ball. they probably ping pong balls, but they probably ended up winning this lottery. But Atlanta hops up, and then they're going through, and Houston hops up as well too. So two teams have hopped up into the top four. And at that point, it's like, okay, we know that the Raptors are sitting at 6. They have a top 6 protected pick that can go to San Antonio if it falls at 7. So if two teams have moved up, well, that means the Raptors have been pushed down. San Antonio gets the 8th pick. And then San Antonio themselves also in the top 4 of the lottery. Then they, do the commercial break, come back from commercial break. San Antonio ends up with the 4th pick. But again, I think getting the 8th pick is the big win in the draft. But San Antonio gets 4, Houston gets 3, and it's down to Washington and the Hawks. And again, I don't know with the way that they do the drawing, if the Hawks can even get the 2nd pick with the way they do the drawing. So again, if it's the Hawks moving up, I guess Houston jumps up. I might be dumb for not knowing how it fully works. But when it goes down to Washington and Atlanta, and again, this is the thing with the lottery, and I don't know if, people that, have followed the lottery longer can testify to this better, but the lottery over the last few years has definitely been fishy. And I don't know if rigged is the right term. And I don't know if rigged is necessarily what it's been this entire time, because they've made some rule changes as well too. And I know some of the early years, you could definitely say rigged. Like the first couple of lotteries, the famous Ewing lottery, of course, but the first couple of lotteries, everybody had the same exact odds. So if you wanted to rig the lottery, that's the easiest way to do it. There's no the shenanigan, there's no team with a low percentage like Atlanta jumping up. It just is not going to happen. So a little bit easier then, but the last couple of years, like it just seems like everything is kind of worked out. Teams have naturally like kind of jumped up and jumped down. Like I know Orlando, I think got bumped down a couple of years, and then they jumped up and got the number 1 pick in the Palo draft, and then get their franchise guy. They had built, Franz and Suggs in a prior draft before that, after they dropped down to the 5th pick. I know they got that 8th pick in the trade with the Bulls in the Vucevic trade. So that was definitely a win there. But I know like Wnba going to San Antonio, like we basically called it last year. Like Wemby's going to go to San Antonio. There's no way they're not going to put this franchise guy in one of these, bad franchise situations. They're going to put him in some place that's stable. He's this generational talent. And the other team to keep an eye on is the Trailblazers, because Dame Lillard is, the superstar that we thought was going to be there for forever, requested a trade. He's now gone. They need a way to replace it. So keep an eye on them. They're probably going to jump up. And of course, the Spurs get the number 1 pick. The Charlotte Hornets get the number 2 pick. And then the Blazers jump up to number 3. They're able to get Scoot, who, don't give up on Scoot, could still definitely be a major, major piece for that franchise going forward. I think definitely very encouraging the way he finished the season. But, it's like, okay, it definitely worked out that way. And I didn't necessarily know if the league was like, okay, let's dip our fingers into the lottery and let's put these teams in let's reward some teams for some stuff. I didn't necessarily know what that team, like where it was going to be this year. And part of that reason was because a lot of people are kind of unsold on what the draft is from a value. Like a lot of people don't necessarily think that this is the best draft that we've ever had. So from a talent standpoint, it's like, there's like, what is the reward for a franchise? Like, for San Antonio, it's like you have incredible stability. Well, you get this gem in Wembanyama. For Blazers, you get the chance to reset with a franchise cornerstone. We didn't know at the time whether it's Miller or Scoop, but you get to take a swing in a potential franchise guard to replace Lillard in Henderson. And, again, we don't necessarily know what the reward would be for a franchise. So it's like, okay, is this a year where they kind of just stick to normal? Washington has been in a bad place for the last couple of years. Detroit as well too has some interesting talent, but the wins haven't necessarily been there. Do those teams just end up with the number one picks? But again, they said Atlanta had never won the lottery. They've never really, again, been a team that has had incredible lottery odds. The only time that they've had number one lottery odds was in 2005. And then the next 2 years, 2006 and 7, they were second in both of those years. I mean, they've had years where they're fourth, fifth. Like they've definitely been up there, but for the most part, they haven't been a team that has been at the top of the lottery. So, a team that has been pretty mid. I think there's a stat where it's like, I don't remember if it's like the last 5 years, 10 years. It might not even matter with the Hawks. You can go back to whatever the number is. Like, whatever it is, their record is 5. Let's just say the last 5 years. Their record is like 500. Like, again, they are an average team. But again, if you're a Wizards fan and you're a Pistons fan and the league was like, hey, let's dip our little fingers into the lottery and move some stuff around. The fact that the league has now screwed you over a couple of times in a row, like this is not good. For the Wizards to not get the number one pick in the draft, where it was like there is no regarded number one guy, and they didn't fall that far. They're at number 2. Again, there's no obvious number one guy, so it's not like a huge loss for them to be at number 2. But the fact that the league didn't trust them with the number one pick, the Wizards, the Ted Leonsis thing with the stadium and the relationships with him in the city, I don't know if the league was like, hey, let's just reward this team with the number one pick. But they said, hey, it's time for Atlanta. So Atlanta, I don't know if it's a win for Atlanta to get the number one pick in the draft with no consensus number one overall player, but it's better to have the number one overall pick than the number 9 or the number 10 pick or whatever they had before. It's also, I think, the biggest leap for any team ever in the lottery. So I know now the number one rumors become Trae Young, what happens with Trae Young. And I know attached to that is, do the Spurs pursue Trae Young this summer? And again, Spurs, I think big winners of the lottery now to get 4 and 8, because they kind of have a chance to manipulate this draft. Like if there's a guy they really like it, let's say even 1 or 2 or whatever, like I don't know if you trade 4 and 8 to go up to number 1, but hey, if you're really sold on a guy, like you now have the flexibility to be able to make a move like that. And if Atlanta says, maybe the Trae Young thing's not there, but again, there's not a number one guy we like, let's just go get 2 guys and continue to build this team. And we have some contract stuff that we need to work out in the future. We can get a couple of younger players instead of maybe one guy we're not like super sold. Like who knows what the Spurs are able to do with 2 assets like that. Maybe again, it's just for them to stay put and take 2 picks. We'll see how it plays out, but they have some maneuverability now. And I think, again, in a draft with no consensus number one overall, like last year, if they get 4 and 8 or any team gets 4 and 8, it just doesn't matter. Like the Spurs aren't trading that number 1 overall pick to get Wnba. So again, even if it's not Wnba, if it's a guy that you like more than the rest of the play, like, if it's a guy, there is a greater chance that that is more likely than a year where there is just a overwhelming consensus number 1 overall prospect. And I know people don't like the draft, but we've never had a draft that has just been completely devoid of any talent. Like there has been, I don't want to necessarily say generational players in every draft, but even that 2013 draft had Giannis in it. Gobert is apparently the greatest defensive player of all time in the regular season. You have 4 defensive player of the year awards, but regardless, like a win of a draft pick, like you're going to take that career 10 times out of 10. Maybe you take it with some hand sanitizer in some certain spots, but you're still like a successful draft pick, KCP. Again, you go through all the different drafts, like there is valuable talent in every draft. So it's because the evaluators are sitting here saying like, oh, the draft is not good. Okay, well, that doesn't mean there's not going to be good players in the draft. Maybe we just have to do a little extra work to find who those players are. I don't know. Maybe people need to be more willing to go off the consensus of whatever the board. I don't know what the adjustment is, but again, like Giannis was the 13th pick in the draft that year. So I don't know how the revision is, like if we go back and do a revisionist history on that, what the steps would be to say, hey, this is, and I mean, in the moment, I mean, yeah, it's obviously, the crazy athletic potential kid is the guy we should be taking in the top 5. You could say that, but there the approach to the draft has to be different than just this is a bad draft, because there is going to be talent in the draft. And I mean, the teams that are fine, somebody's going to really benefit from it. So I have just started kind of working through who some of those players are, but like, I think my board is going to be super crazy this year. And I know my board gets crazier every year. I had Maxwell Lewis way too high last year. Amari Bailey, like if you're going to go with your heart's going to not necessarily take you in the right place all the time. It's just, you got to be willing to take the misses if you're making the board. But I think this is going to be the year where we could see like a ton of wacky boards. We could see, I think, who knows draft time, like what kind of chaos trade move. I think because people are saying a bad draft, that's just let's give these guys a chance. Let's give these guys a chance. I kind of like what I'm seeing from some of the prospects. Just because there's not that star player doesn't mean there's not valuable assets to be had. But shout out to Atlanta for winning the lottery. Shout out to the league for once again blessing the Spurs. If the league is rigged, I am not complaining. It's like the Killer Mike verse. If this is if this is the design, then you got to thank God, because he's the mastermind. He's laying the Spurs out to get Wembanyama and the multiple top 10 picks. The good things are happening so far in San Antonio. So I don't know what the future holds, what the moves are to balance, the Thanos theory where the universe has to have balance. I don't know what the balance out moves are in the future where the Spurs go back to even. But for now, the good karma continues, especially at least on the draft side for the San Antonio Spurs. So we did a heavy WNBA pod. Shout out to y'all for sticking through that. So I mean, it's not like it's gonna hurt the ratings. It's not like the bosses are complaining about the ratings because of the WNBA segment. But I've got to be honest, like the thing with this pod is we talk about what we're excited about, and I was like genuinely excited to see what Caitlin Clark was going to do tonight. The rest kind of, and as a, and this is just the way I work as a fan. But if I'm going to see what the Caitlin Clark is going to do and what the Aces are going to do and what these other teams are going to do, like, you just got to see you got to have knowledge of all the other teams. You got to know the enemy. So you get drawn into all the other teams, and it's just a natural, I guess, maybe competitive thing. But I was curious to see what the rest of the WNBA was going to look like as well, too. So I don't know. Let's check the score of the Aces game really quick, because this Timberwolves Nuggets game is currently tied in the fourth quarter. And, game 5 in Denver series tied 2-2. This is going to be an absolute heater. So I don't know if any game 1 of a regular season of any sport would take over. Like if it was college football, week 1, Michigan versus, Michigan with the hardwire, that first game is not going to be worth watching anyways. We could easily watch this Timberwolves Nuggets game. But NFL week 1, this is a high level game. So no disrespect to the WNBA if we turn it off. Okay. Aces Mercury 1 point at halftime. Big second quarter from the Mercury to cut it to 1. We've got, no Brittany Griner. I guess I got that wrong. Where did Brittany Griner go? Let's see. Let's do a quick Brittany Griner. Let's see where she's at. She is on the Mercury. So is she not playing tonight? Is Brittany Griner out? I need to get my Brittany Griner notifications turned on Bleacher Report. Yeah, out indefinitely with a toe injury. Oh man, big loss for the Mercury, but hanging in there anyways without their big stars. So Taurasi with 12 points, 2 rebounds, 4 of 7 from the field, 4 of 6 from the 3-point line. Taurasi on a heater. Oh, and I forgot that, they had traded for Kalia Cooper as well, too. So 3 of 7 to start. But, Kalia Cooper is a former finals MVP. She'll be a great addition to that team. In the Taurasi thing, so I guess we're back on the WNBA quickly, but there was a ESPN list of the top 25 players for the WNBA for going into this season, and rookies were not allowed. So I was seeing some backlash about, oh, no Caitlin Clark on the list. But again, it's like, well, the rookies haven't played yet, so we're not putting him on the list. I get it. I'm not saying it's not the right way to do it. I would be curious to see where they would have had Caitlin Clark in that list, just for like, hey, where would you have this player going into the season? But I don't think they had Taurasi in the top 5. And I know like her and Sue Bird and like, they're veterans, obviously. And the young talent in the WNBA is definitely emerging, and it's definitely getting much stronger. And it's definitely all in the aces as well, too, like going through the list. The aces might have like the 3 best players in the league. Who knows? But I don't think Taurasi made it. Leah Boston sliding in there at 14. So, 2 for 6. You got to get her some shots. They got to figure out how to make that combination work. We'll see if is that going to be like the first NBA situation over there, unhappy superstar, the Aaliyah Boston, Caitlin Clark combination. But yeah, no Taurasi in the top 25. So Kelsey Mitchell, another Indiana Fever. So you got two top 25 teammates there for Caitlin Clark to work with. And I think they will play Mitchell and Caitlin Clark together a lot more going forward. I know, again, I think they brought Kelsey Mitchell off the bench tonight, if I remember that correctly. But I don't know. Again, I don't know if that's a starting lineup move, but I think that's definitely like a lineup that finishes the game. Yeah, 17 minutes for Mitchell tonight, 2 for 4 from the field, the leading scorer on the team last year. Erica Wheeler playing some heavy minutes. They got Katie Lou Samuelson back as well, too, playing her role there. But no Taurasi in the top 25. I thought was a little strange because, again, I get the veteran thing, but it's not like she's Chris Paul. Like, I feel like you still would be like, okay, in a 1-game situation or a 1-season type of thing, in a playoff situation, I still feel like, is there 25 other players that you're going to take over Taurasi? So she is given the aces all that they can handle tonight. Pause. But we'll go check that out a little bit. We'll check out the rest of this Nuggets Timberwolves game, and we'll report back on the NBA. Don't worry. We'll get back on track with the NBA and all that stuff. And I guess the WNBA is here to stay. Make no mistake. The WNBA is here to stay, at least for this week. We had fun watching tonight, but we'll report back with the rest of the playoff stuff this weekend with Sam. Thank you guys for listening. Follow Rem and Sam across all platforms. We're at Rem and Sam podcast on basically any platform you can think of. Most of them. We're out there. Just if you're on it, give it a little search and see if you can find the Rem and Sam or Rem and Sam podcast. But thank you guys for listening. Have a good night.